Hello, welcome to the Moment Ep8. This time I have two stories. I'll be talking about a report into improving the North roads to help improve the economy, and I'll also be talking about a Newcastle film festival that's setting out to put the city on the map for the wider film industry. So, let's take a look at the first story. Transport for the North have published a report into looking at how improving road and rail connections could help the North's economy. TfN themselves are a group made up of, quote, elected and business leaders from all areas of northern England. Their partners include Highways England, Network Rail, the Department of Transport and HS2. The report they created is called the Strategic Transport Plan Position Statement, which is a very confusing title, but they try to clarify this by saying that the vision for what they're trying to do is to create, quote, a thriving north of England where modern transport connections drive economic growth and support an excellent quality of life. Now, that's maybe a title with a lot of words and not a whole lot actually being said, but let's take a look at some of the actual proposals. So, the first thing to look at is their proposed strategic development corridors, which are basically several road and rail connections between certain parts of the region to help move people and goods around more effectively. And the first suggestion is for, quote, better connecting people and goods between the new carbon and research assets along the northwest and northeast coastlines. And just for clarity's sake, the asset on the northwest coast that they're referring to is most likely Seascale Nuclear Power Station, which is part of the larger area of Sellafield, which in itself includes the gas-burning Fellside Power Station, as well as the Sellafield Nuclear Reprocessing and Waste Management Company. As for the east, the asset that they're talking about is most likely EDF Energy in Hartlepool, which is again a nuclear power station. This connection between power plants is one of 7 proposed connections, and it's referred to as a multimodal connection in the report, which I can only take to mean that it's relating to both road and rail, not one or the other specifically. However, on the specifically rail-oriented side of the planned improvements is something called the West Coast to Sheffield City Region line, and this, according to the report, would, quote, support the links between advanced manufacturing clusters in Cumbria, Lancashire, Greater Manchester and Sheffield City Region, and is primarily a rail corridor to complement other investments being pursued in road improvements to the northwest of Manchester and across the Pennines. And they mention several other rail connections in the document that they believe need prioritising, including a line, quote, connecting the North East, Tees Valley, North Yorkshire, Leeds City Region and the Sheffield City Region. As for the roads, the report highlights 12 connectivity priorities across the north, including the A1 Scotch Corner to Scotland, the A19 Expressway, the Leeds City Region, and several other improvements along the A1 from Doncaster to Sheffield, West Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire. So it certainly sounds like a very diverse plan of road and rail improvements that the TfN hopes will improve the economy of the North. According to the report, their suggestions will help employers and businesses by giving, quote, better access to a highly skilled labour market with improved links to the supply chain, more diverse and cost-effective business opportunities, and a more buoyant marketplace. And while that might have slipped into buzzwords at the end there, certainly it's possible to see that better road and rail connections would allow potential employees to consider going further afield for work if a better transport system was available. The report also says that it would help tourists, again, by connecting national parks and other destinations. The problem with the report is that there are a lot of paragraphs which don't really say anything at all, and the report itself is only 15 pages long. Now, that's not necessarily indicative of a lack of content or a lack of ideas, but there is certainly a lack of emphasis on whether these proposals would actually have the impact that the TfN hopes they will. In fact, they say themselves, quote, at this stage in the evolution of the TfN and the strategic transport plan itself, the how is necessarily less specific. It's clear that their goal is more road and rail usage. In fact, they project, quote, rail travel to increase up to 400% by 2050 and road travel to increase by 55% by 2050. There isn't much to say where they're actually getting these projections from. There's no cited sources for that. And it seems like aside from using the word strategic a lot, there isn't much of a solid plan, at least not from this document. And I hate to sound cynical, but this whole transport plan really doesn't seem to give any definitive ideas as to exactly how any of this would really improve the economy of the North. Certainly, doing the improvements themselves would create jobs for the time that all of the rail and road networks would need improving for. But after that, where would it go? And there doesn't seem to be any kind of thought towards the future of how exactly these improvements will help the area. But I will put a link to the report in the description so you can look at it for yourself and see if you agree with my assessment or if there's anything else of value in it that maybe I missed. So now let's turn to the second story. Next year we'll see the first Newcastle Film Festival take place in the city. The webpage for the event says that the festival will, quote, showcase excellence in filmmaking, and it also talks about the internationality of the event, with, quote, feature films, shorts, animation, etc., coming from countries like the USA, Russia, Germany, France, Mexico, and it goes on to list more. Considering it's only going to be the first year of the festival, the scale of it seems very ambitious, and I interviewed Jackie Miller-Charlton, who's the president of the Newcastle Film Festival, to talk about the idea and how it all got started.
Well, effectively, I'm the co-founder and president. The other co-founder, I was approached by Mr. T.J. Gill, who is 25 years in the film and media industry, educated out of Delhi University. And he approached me with an idea of a festival in Newcastle to promote film. He thought it was a great opportunity to unite the world in all the wonderful things of creativity and art, etc., in a very upside-down, topsy-turvy, disturbing planet we live at the moment. And I really loved the idea. Of course, it was an idea, and he thought about, maybe a soft launch, and I said to him, there's no such thing as a soft launch. We either do it or we don't, because, you can't get a second opportunity to make a first impression, particularly in a city like Newcastle. So once I decided I was in, I then assembled a team, two of which the team work and live in London, and two of the team are myself and TJ, who live here in the northeast, but particularly me, commute back and forward to London quite a few times while we pull this whole thing together.
I asked what kind of filmmakers and films the show was trying to attract.
We have 16 categories. We have sci-fi, horror, LGBT, short film, documentary, higher education. We've put a category in for regional schools, northeast only, so we can try and encourage, children from an early age, from sort of 12 through 16 category, to start thinking creatively. We've got a whole plethora, script writers, all sorts, absolutely all sorts.
I then asked about the structure of the festival itself and how Jackie envisaged it would work.
At the moment, I'm working at a very senior level on 5 or 6 different governments from around the world to come and join us on a very business-focused festival. And if you think of the festival as almost sliding doors, you'll have, a carnival of activity for the public, which will be all across the city, where we'll have all of the selected films, which will be, we have over 1,300 films at the moment from 73 countries already entered. So they will be whittled down to 200, and they will be what's called selected. Then, after that, those films will be shown around 5-6 different venues around the city. The programming, we're actually starting right now. That process takes about between 6 and 9 months. Then, on the last night of the festival, we will have an award ceremony where those finalists, who will be told on the Saturday at the festival, they will be invited to a VIP Celebrity Awards dinner where we'll have celebrities from Hollywood, across the UK, invited to join us.
Jackie then went on to explain what the wider vision for the future of the festival actually is.
What our vision for the future is to create a film market right here in the northeast that attracts global talent to the region. We also would like to have a studio eventually based here in the northeast. Why not? There are only 4 other film markets in the world. It's a big world. There is plenty room for another film market, provided it's done professionally and we can attract major players to support and back us. But of course we have all of the major infrastructure and components that anybody would be looking for that to become a success. So it's all good. And because it's very business driven, we have a very clear set of business objectives.
So it sounds from that as if there's a very specific vision that goes beyond it just being an awards ceremony, and it'll certainly be good for the area to have these large film industries attracted to the region, even if it's just for the knock-on effect of increased tourism, and which of course would help out greatly. But it'll definitely be interesting to see what comes out of the Newcastle Film Festival in the future, and if they can indeed make it this big chance to increase the Northeast's profile as a location and as a centre for the creative arts. And that's all for this episode. Join me in a fortnight's time where I'll have more from around Northumberland and Newcastle, but until then, I'm Oliver Ralph and this is The Moment.